This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good morning everybody. So in the previous class we are looking at the restraints of a mentally ill person. So we are dealing with forensic psychiatry. So how to contain a mentally ill person. So how to restrict him we are looking, and then we have two types. One is immediate restraint, another is admission into the psychiatric hospital. Admission into the psychiatric hospital also is one of the methods where we will give treatment and then we will contain the mentally ill person. So immediate restraint, we have known how to contain. So when immediate restraint is done is when a mentally ill person is dangerous to himself or to others. And then if the person is suffering from delirium due to any diseases, we have learned that any CNS infections can cause delirium. Any acute infections, fevers can cause delirium, mostly in the elderly population. And then we have one more reason, delirium tremens. So these three are the reasons for which we will have immediate restraint for a mentally ill person. For this, consent from the guardian should be taken. If it is not available, then we can restrict the patient or restrict the mentally ill person, and then till only the dangers exists. If the danger is not there, then we need to take the consent from the elders. If the danger is there, then we can, without consent, we can restrict the person. So done under the personal care of the attendants, and then it is lawful as long as the danger exists. So that is about immediate restraint. Now, what is the procedure for admission to a psychiatric hospital? So first one is admission on the voluntary basis. Suppose if the person is a major greater than 18 years, he will voluntarily come to the psychiatric hospital and give a request to the medical officer in charge of the psychiatric hospital, and then the medical officer in charge will inquire, will examine the person within 24 hours, and if the medical officer feels that the person requires treatment, then he will admit the person as an inpatient. That is under voluntary basis. Now, under special circumstances, admission under special circumstances, here the mentally ill person, if he is not able to give consent because of his mental illness, then an application by the relative or friend can be put forward, and then this application should be accompanied by 2 medical certificates. Among that, one should be from the government medical officer, and then the distance, the time period between these 2 medical certificates should be within 10 days. And then based on these certificates, he can be admitted to the psychiatric hospital for a period of 90 days. Reception order on application. Here, reception order is from the court, from the magistrate. So the medical officer in charge of the psychiatric hospital gives an application to the magistrate if the treatment is required to be continued for greater than 6 months. There is one condition, or for the safety of health and property of the mentally ill person. So suppose if the patient is already in the psychiatric hospital, then if the medical officer wants to contain the patient still further for treatment and also for containment, then he will have to put an application to the magistrate, and then the magistrate will pass order, which we call it as the reception order, so that whether he can contain or not. That is one condition. Another is any relative. If the person is outside in the home, then any relative can apply to the magistrate court for reception order to be kept in the hospital. So this is the application by a prescribed form to the magistrate should be submitted either by husband or by wife or by any relative, and all these husband, wife, relative should be major and should have seen the patient within 14 days of submitting the application. And the application again, it should accompanied with 2 medical certificates, and one of which should be from the government medical officer, and these 2 certificates should have been examined the patient within 10 days of the application submitted to the magistrate. And the certificates must suggest the admission of the patient. So after receiving the magistrate application, if the magistrate is satisfied with the procedure and with the application, he can pass a reception order, which is an immediate reception order, or he may fix a date for consideration of the petition, and then he will call again on a particular date, and then if he is satisfied, he can pass a reception order which is valid for 30 days. That means within 30 days he has to go to admitted in the hospital. If it is not satisfied, he refuses the application. So this is the procedure of the magistrate giving a reception order for a mentally ill person. Reception order on the production of mentally ill person before the magistrate. Suppose if the police officer brings the mentally ill person to the magistrate, how are the procedure? So officer in charge of the PS police station, if he catch holds of the wandering or a dangerously ill person, then the magistrate the magistrate will send this wandering or dangerously mental ill person for examination, and if the examination is satisfied, he can call a doctor and he make him to get examined, or he himself can examine. The magistrate himself can examine, or he can call any doctor to get examined there itself. If it is satisfied, then he can pass a reception order. If he is not satisfied, he can hand over the person for the care and the treatment by the relatives or friend who executes a bond. So even after submission of the executive bond, he can hand over the patient or the person to the care and treatment of relatives. Admission after judicial inquisition. So if a mentally ill person is possessing property, then again application should be submitted by the relatives to the magistrate, and if the magistrate is satisfied with the issue reception order to admit in the psychiatric hospitals, and also he can allow some manager to take care of the property concerning the mentally ill person. Admission of the mentally ill prisoner is also the same. If the prisoner is mentally ill, so the police officer will apply to the magistrate. The magistrate will examine the mentally ill person, or he can call a doctor, psychiatrist to examine him. If he is satisfied, then he can pass a reception order. If he is not satisfied, then he can allow the person to go into mentally ill prison. So admission of an escaped mentally ill person is also the procedure is of the same. And then discharge of the mentally ill person, it can be of voluntary and then admission by ability. We know that voluntary patient can himself, if he knows that his mental illness has been cured, he can ask the medical officer in charge. He can submit an application that he wants to get discharged, his mental illness is cured. So on receiving the application by the medical officer himself will form a board within 72 hours, and then the board will take a decision whether to continue for another period or not, or he can be discharged. So this is how a voluntary patient can ask for discharge. If he is not a voluntary patient, if he is a minor, then he can ask for relatives application by the relatives, then the application can be by the medical officer, and the medical officer can decide whether to send or not. And another is application to the magistrate. The applications can be sent to the magistrate, and the magistrate again can in turn ask the doctor to examine and then decide for discharge of the patient. So another method is discharge can also be there by execution of bonds by relatives and friends, that they will take the mentally ill person with proper care, and then with the assurance that they will take care of the mentally ill person in their homes. So that is another method of discharge of mentally ill person. Next one is responsibilities. What are the responsibilities of a mentally ill person? So that means, what is meant by responsibility is, it is a legal liability of a person for his actions. Legal liability of a person for his actions. That is known as responsibility of a mentally ill person. So responsibilities can be of two types. One is civil responsibility, another is criminal responsibility. So civil responsibilities are criminal responsibilities, and we know that the law presumes that every person is mentally sound until proved otherwise. So we know that everybody is normal unless he's proving himself or is proved by some other lawyer. The law presumes, the court presumes that everybody is sound, mentally sound. So let us see what are the civil responsibilities of the mentally ill person. So these are the side headings under which we will study the civil responsibilities. What are the civil responsibility as a witness, in relation to consent, in relation to contracts, in relation to the government service, in relation to inheritance of the property, in relation to the management of property and affairs of mentally ill person, in relation to the marriage, partnership, and then testamentary capacity. So these are the responsibilities. Means when a mentally ill person, can he give a witness, can he consent, can he contract in a business, can a mentally ill person join a government service, can a mentally ill person inherit a property, can he manage a property, can he marriage, if a mentally ill person is, can he marry, and then partnership between the business contracts, and then testamentary capacity, giving a will. So all these we will study how it is. So first one is as a witness. As a witness, the mentally ill person cannot testify in the court of law. So he cannot be as a witness. He cannot testify in the court of law for giving any evidence in the court of law under oath. So a mentally ill person cannot testify in the court of law. However, he can testify under the following conditions. These are: suppose if he understands, if his understanding is not affected, if he can understand the questions put to him and give rational answers to them, then he can be as a witness. And he can also testify during lucid interval. We have told lucid interval is a period of sanity between two periods of insanity. It is a period of sanity between two successive periods of insanity. So during lucid interval, his mental condition is normal. He is sound mind, so he can testify during lucid interval. And then understands the obligations of an oath. If he understands the obligations of an oath, then he can testify. If he understands the necessity of telling the truth, then he can testify. So normally, a mentally ill person cannot testify or cannot give a witness in the court of law. But these are the four conditions under which he can testify during this interval. He can testify if he understands. Understanding is not affected. He can understand the questions put to him. If he understands the obligations of an oath after taking an oath, and if he understands the necessity of telling the truth. Next one is consent. So consent to any act mentioned in IPC, example, court, medical examination, or sexual intercourse or surgery is not valid. So a mentally ill person cannot give a valid consent for sexual intercourse, for any surgery, for any medical examination, or even hurt. So because the mentally ill person cannot understand the nature and the consequences of the act. So, and also MTP, medical termination of pregnancy. A mentally ill person who is pregnant cannot give a consent for termination of pregnancy, cannot give consent for abortion, and it is not valid because she cannot understand the nature and the consequences of act. That's why it is not valid. So first one is witnessing. A mentally ill person cannot witness in the court of law unless the court accepts. Consent, a person cannot give consent for sexual intercourse, for surgery, for examination, medical examination, and hurt, and also for medical termination of pregnancy. Contracts. So only a person of sound mind is competent to contract. It is under section 11 of Indian Contract Act 1872. So only if the person is of sound mind, he can be in a contract with anyone. So when is a person said to have a sound mind? So these are the conditions by which we can know that the person is of a sound mind. If at the time when he makes the contract, he is capable of understanding the contract and of forming a rational judgment as to its effect upon its interest. So he understands the contract and then he can produce or form a rational judgment basing on that contract. If that condition is sound in him, then he can make then we can say that the person is of sound mind. If other party can show it did not know the mental condition of the other party and that the contract was fair, the contract may be held valid. Suppose if there are two parties, one person is mentally ill person, but the other party doesn't know that this person is a mentally ill person, but the contract has done in a very fair and good manner. In that case, the contract is still valid because it has done in a fair and a good manner. If the mental illness develops after contract is signed, then the contract is still valid until the mental illness makes the other party unable to perform services relevant to the contract. So if the contract, at the time of contract, the opposite party has not known that the person is mentally ill, but the contract has taken place in a fair manner, then the contract is valid. If the person develops mental illness after the contract, then also the contract is valid, unless if the opposite party is having a difficulty in executing the contract works, then he can ask for cancellation of the contract. Contract can be made during lucid interval. So lucid interval contracts are valid contracts. So a sane person who is delirious from fever, who is drunk, that he cannot understand the terms of contract or form a rational judgment as its effect on its interest, cannot contract while such delirium or drunkenness lasts. So a person who is drunk and then who is in delirious condition, is if he is making a contract during these two conditions, then the contract is not valid because he cannot understand the nature of the terms of the contract, and then he cannot deduce rational judgments from the contract. So because of these two reasons, the contract remains invalid. One is in a delirium condition, another is in a drunkenness state. Till the delirious condition and drunkenness is not relieved or not asked, we cannot make the contract as valid. So these are some of the conditions where a mentally ill person, if is involved in a contract, whether it is valid or invalid. So most of the time, if the opposite party doesn't know, it is valid even if the person is mentally ill person after the signing contract, it is still valid unless the opposite party is hindering in services of the contract, and then the person can make in a contract in a lucid interval. Only in drunkenness and delirium you cannot make it. Next, government service. Can a mentally ill person enter the government service? No, he cannot enter the government. So a mentally ill person cannot enter a government service for any government jobs, for any positions in the higher officials involving the public service. He cannot enter any government service. Regarding inheritance, can a mentally ill person inherit the property of his parents? Yes, of course, he can inherit. You know, a mentally ill person cannot be disqualified from inheritance to any property. So this is under 28 of Hindu Succession Act 1956. So if a mentally ill person is there, he can inherit properties from his parents. So mental illness cannot be qualified for inheritance. However, this is one more entity called a murderer is disqualified from inheritance under section 25 of Hindu Succession Act 1956. Disqualifies a murderer or an abettor of a murder from inheritance. Abettor of murder means nothing but because of some action somebody has committed a murder. So it's called abetting. Abatement to suicide we say. Because of some action the person has committed suicide. In the same way, abettor of murder. Because of your action, because of some action the other person has murdered. So that is called abetting of a murder. So a murderer is prevented from inheritance under section 25 of HSA Hindu Succession Act, whereas the mental illness is cannot be disqualified for the inheritance. Management of property and affairs of a mentally ill person. How a mentally ill person manages his property if he is mentally ill. So this is mentioned in chapter 4 of Mental Health Act, MHA, Mental Health Act. So here an application should be sent to the magistrate, to the court. So if a person has been incapable of managing his property due to mental unsoundness, an application for holding an inquiry into his mental condition may be made to the district court. So DC, district court, an application has to be sent for examination, for inquiry into whether the person is mentally sound or not. Who can apply this application? One is by any of his relatives, but in that relatives, not friends are not allowed, and then unrelated persons or neighbors are not allowed. Only his own relatives should apply the application, and then public curator can apply. The Advocate General of the state can put an application in the DC, and then district collector can apply for this. So these are the 4 persons who can apply for property management to the district court for the management of mentally ill person property. So alleged mentally ill person is personally examined either by the presiding officer of the court, or the court may call any other person, a psychiatrist, for opinion or report. So after application, the magistrate will examine him by himself, or he will call any doctor, especially a psychiatrist, to give his opinion after examination. So the findings given after inquisition by the psychiatrist should be given like this: whether the person is indeed mentally ill. If yes, can he take care of himself? Can he take care of his property? Or he can neither take himself or neither property. So specifically, the doctor has to write whether what is the degree of his mental illness, whether he can take care of himself, or whether he can take care of his property, or neither he can take of himself or his property. This fact must be clearly stated by the doctor in the certificate. Then appointment of guardian. So now the court will appoint a guardian to take care of the mentally ill person. So if a mentally ill person is incapable of taking care of himself, a guardian is appointed. And then court will appoint a manager to take care of his property. If a mentally ill person is incapable of taking care of his property, a manager is appointed to take care of his property. And then in this appointment, the court himself, the magistrate himself will tell what is the remuneration, what is the salary of the manager. And then one important point is legal heirs of mentally ill person cannot be appointed as a guardian or manager. So all the legal heirs, they are not allowed or they cannot be ordinarily be appointed as a legal guardians or managers. So guardian is the one who will take care of the mentally ill person. Manager is the one who will take care of the property of a mentally ill person. So both these guardian and the manager are appointed by the court, and then the court will decide what is the salary of the manager or the guardian that the court will decide. And the legal heirs will not be allowed to take these two posts of guardianship and then manager. So what are the duties of this guardian or the manager? One is to take care of mentally ill person and those persons dependent on him. Suppose the mentally ill person is an elder and then he has two children, maybe kids, maybe minors. So the guardian should taking care of them also. And then manager, we told that he will take care of the property of the mentally ill person. What are the powers of the manager? So the manager has all the powers in relation to the property as the mentally ill person would have had if he was not ill. So all the powers are there with the manager as it would have been there for a mentally ill person if he is not a mentally ill person. And then he can, what he can do, he can sell, he can mortgage, he can lease of the property for the purpose of settlements of debts. So anything he can do. He has all the power. The manager has all the power, and these powers are given by the court. And then the manager can pay all the debts and liabilities of the mentally ill person by mortgaging or selling any of the immovable properties of the mentally ill person. Only, he cannot do by himself. He has to take the permission from the court, from the district court. So only after making an application to the district court and taking the permission from it, he can either sell or he can mortgage the property, and then he can pay off the debts, whether it is there for a mentally ill person. So the manager has all the power, but he has to take the permission from the district court. And then admission to the psychiatric hospital. So we have seen this. If the district court thinks that the condition of the mentally ill person is such that he must be admitted in the psychiatric hospital, an order, the reception order is made to that effect, and the detention will be till such period that order is revoked. So we have seen previously how the reception order is passed by the magistrate, the relative, either by the husband or by wife or a relative, or it can be a doctor, or it can be a police officer who can fit a reception application in the magistrate, and then the magistrate will pass reception order in relation to the mental illness. And then suspicion of mental illness. If the district court is informed that the person who was found to be mentally ill is now free from such illness, it may direct a subordinate court to inquire into the matter. So if the mentally ill person has cured of his mental illness, then the district court DC will give an orders to the lower subordinate courts to inquire about the person, and then to bring the report back to it. So a second inquiry is held following the same procedure. If the person found to be mentally sound, all actions taken regarding him would be set aside. So if the mentally ill person is cured, so two such inquiries are called, and then all the managers and guardians and everything will be set aside. So again, the mentally ill person can take hold of his property, he can take care of himself and his family. What about marriage? Can a mentally ill person marry? According to a valid Hindu marriage states that neither party must be mentally ill at the time of marriage. Means a mentally ill person cannot marry. If he marries, if the opposite party doesn't know that the other person is mentally ill, then the marriage becomes void. So if any party is mentally ill, the marriage is voidable. So it becomes void. So as if the marriage has not taken place. So a mentally ill person cannot marry, and if he marries, then the marriage becomes void. Partnership. A mental illness of a partner does not automatically dissolve the partnership until court is moved for its resolution. So for any partnership, for any sharing of the property, for any sharing of the profits, so it doesn't dissolve itself. If the mental illness occurs after the partnership or even before, the other party has to approach the court for resolution. Next one is testamentary capacity. Testamentary capacity is a person's legal and mental ability to make or alter a valid will. So testamentary capacity is a person's legal and mental ability to make or alter a valid will. What is the definition of a will? We'll see. The legal declaration of the intention of a testator with respect to his property, which he decides to be carried into effect after his death. So this is done in Indian Succession Act, Succession Act 1925. So, with respect to his property, which so person executing a will, if he's in male, and if the person is female, we call it as testator in case of male. What is a holographic will? Holographic will is a will that has been entirely handwritten and signed by the testator. Normally, a will must be signed by the witnesses attesting to the validity of the testator's signature and intent. But a holographic wills that have not been witnessed are treated equally with test will. So they need not be signed or attested. This is according to the Indian Succession Act 1925. So a holographic will is the will that has been entirely handwritten by the testator, and normally for any will, two witnesses should be signed, attesting that the testator is normal of sound mind or significant that his signature is correct. But in holographic will, there is no need of any witnesses signing on the will. What are the requirements of a valid will? The requirements of a valid will, it must be properly written or typed, properly witnessed and signed by the testator, as well as at least two witnesses. Age, the testator must be of greater than 18 years. He should be a major. The testator must have sound mind. He must be of sound mind at the time of making a will. That means compos mentis should be there. And how can a person is said to possess a sound mind is if he has the capacity of recollecting memories and then recognizing his relatives and friends, understands the relations to him, and then judging his obligations to all. So if he has these conditions, we can say that the person is having a sound mind, where he can recollect memories,
Uncle,
he
call
can
have
understand
you.
relatives and friends,
Daddy.
understanding the relations to him, and judging his obligations. So testator should
Rabiaban
not be
చేశారు
under
చేశారు
should be no
అన్ని
dishonest.
వేసాను ఇన్వెంట్
Physical exam, especially food, influence of drug or drink or asphyxiating pain in giving a will. The conditions which do not disqualify for making a valid will is agraphia. Agraphia means failure to communicate through writing. Alexia, failure to understand reading, and then blindness, deafness, and dumbness. If a person can communicate properly through signs or writing, then he cannot be disqualified. So even a blind person, deaf person, and dumb person can make a valid will. And any diseases not affecting his mind, he can make a valid will. Eccentricity, the person is having unusual likes and dislikes and habits, he can also make a valid will. If a person is feeble-minded, motor or sensory aphasia, he can make a valid will. Physical informed, he can make a. So all these things cannot. A doctor can of mind taking of the testator, well oriented in person, and psychiatric or psychological examination, including intelligence session, can be done to in order to certify that the person is having a sound mind by history, by orientation in time, space, and person, and then by examination. So these are some of the questions that can be asked for knowing the soundness of a person, of a mentally ill person, or of a person who is making a value. Simple arithmetic sums, additions or subtractions or multiplications. And to determine undue pressure or influence, ask all persons to leave room and then question him in isolation. And the presence of any mental strain or any memory loss, and then some of the liability. These are some of the conditions by which we can examine the soundness of a person in making a valid will. So if a person is in delirium and he cannot make a valid will, a person making a will in delirium is not valid. A person in delusions, if he is making a will, then it is a valid. A person affected by insane delusions can make a will, valid will, if the delusion is not related in any way with the disposal of the property or the persons affecting it. So we have delusions of infidelity, delusions of persecution, because all this will not affect the property wise. So in that case, delusions, if the person is in delusion and then he is making a will, it is valid. But if the person is in delirium and then he is making a will, means it is not invalid. And then drunkenness and will. If a person is making a will in drunkenness, then it is also not valid. Lucid interval. If the person is making a will in the lucid interval, it is valid. Suicide after making a will. If the person has committed suicide after giving his will, then it's still valid. If the suicide was not as a result of the mental disorder, then it is valid. Wills in extremes means a dying person making a will is still valid. Non-cupative will. Non-cupative means it is a verbal will, a deathbed will. This is called deathbed will or verbal will. It is known as non-cupative will, and this will is also valid, but shall be null at the expiration. If the person, instead of dying, if he survives, then this will becomes invalid. So such will be called as non-cupative will, otherwise called as verbal will or deathbed will. It is valid, but it becomes null and void if the person survives after 1 month. So criminal responsibility of an innocent person is nothing but a person may plead mentally ill to avoid. These are some of the conditions where the person wants to avoid. If the person is in an inquiry, then he wants to avoid the inquiry, so he will act as a mentally ill person. If a person is on trial, then he can act as a mentally ill person. If a person is in a conviction, then he can act. And then if a person is awarded capital punishment, then he can have a mental illness like he can in that. So none of these can proceed in the presence of mental illness. So all these things cannot occur if a person is mentally ill. So a mentally ill person cannot undergo an inquiry, he cannot undergo a trial, he cannot be convicted, and he cannot be punished for capital punishment. McNaughton's rule and right, I think we will see in the next class. So thank you for joining. So we will leave now. So McNaughton's rule we will see in the next class.